Trying to get him. Don't know if that been almost out, but just. Yeah, yeah.
I'll pass. It's gonna be easy. How are you guys doing?
not so much.
Good evening, good afternoon. In the absence of our chair, at this time, I'll be presiding over this, but I do want to make a motion to this board for me to preside over this meeting in the absence of our chair. Can I get a member to make a movement?
So move.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The majority has ruled, and I'll chair the meeting from here. We have a quorum of members present this afternoon, and the New York City Board of Corrections, June 25th, 2024 meeting is now in session. I'd first like to start by introducing our newest board member, Ms. Helen Skipper, appointed by the New York City Council on June 20th, 2024. Helen Skipper, Skip, has been working in peer support since her release from incarceration in 2007. She previously served as the Senior Manager of Peer Services at the New York City Criminal Justice Agency, where she was intentional about creating space for individuals with lived experience. Skip was also formerly a community research assistant at Urban Institute, where she worked on several research initiatives representing community voices and lived experience. She currently serves as a consultant at Urban Institute. In March 2022, Skip became the founding executive director at the New York City Justice Peer Initiative. She is considered a national subject matter expert. Skip is currently pursuing a master's degree in criminology and deviance. She intends to pursue a PhD in criminology, and as a student member of the American Society of Criminology, has already presented at several of the annual conferences. She has also been accepted for authorship in several academic publications. In addition, Skip is a Beyond the Bars 2021 Fellow, a Justice Education Scholar at Columbia University, and a 2024 Bard Public Health Fellow. Skip previously has held leadership positions as the inaugural executive chair of the New York City Peer Workforce Coalition and an executive team member of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative. Skip was also previously the inaugural peer supervisor for the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Welcome, Skip. We are happy to have you to the board, and I'd like to see if you want to say anything. Yes.
Thank you. I am so pleased and happy to be here. And I look forward to using my lived experience turned into lived expertise to make this whole situation easy, palatable, and more humane. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to thank former board member Jackie Sherman for her service to the board over the past 6 years, and welcome our new board member Barry Cozier, who the chair introduced at our last week's meeting at his first VOC board meeting. Our first order of business is a vote on the agenda for today's board meeting, which board members have received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the June 2024 meeting agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Does any member have any edits or comments on the agenda? All in favor of approving the June 2024 agenda? We're hearing no objections. It is approved. Our second order of business is a vote on the draft minutes from the May 14th, 2024 board meeting, which board members have received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the May 14th, 2024 board minutes? Will a board member second the motion?
Second.
Does any member have edits or comments on the minutes? All in favor of approving the May 14th, 2024 board minutes?
Aye.
Hearing no objections, they are approved and duly ratified. I'll now turn it over to Jasmine, our executive director, for VOC updates.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'll start with a brief update on items that were discussed at previous meetings. First, an update on food pantry issues at GRVC. Under the direction of the board's Director of Public Accountability and Oversight, Barbie Melendez, BOC monitors assigned to GRVC conducted a brief assessment of lunchtime meals in 5 housing areas: 4B, 5B, 11A, 15B, and 17B, consisting of general population and special housing areas such as Program for Accelerating Clinical Effectiveness, or PACE, and mental observation from March 15th to March 24th. Director Melendez provided the following update. BOC staff assessed feedings for a population of incarcerated individuals who are fed within their housing areas rather than in a dining hall. This practice is known as in-house feedings. Board staff reviewed camera footage, conducted in-person observations, interviewed staff and incarcerated individuals, and reviewed complaints filed with BOC and DOC. Department Directive 3902R-A, in-house feeding, and 3905R, environmental health inspection and report protocol, are the 2 dominating policies that govern how in-house feedings, pantries, and sanitary inspections are conducted within the department. GRVC does not use a dining hall, and all meals are delivered in-house. During mealtimes, correction officers are responsible for taking the food's temperatures when it arrives in the housing area. Food pans must be kept on warmers or chillers to ensure safe temperatures are maintained. Officers assigned to housing areas should also directly supervise feeding while ensuring everyone gets a food tray. Food servers are supposed to be incarcerated individuals who are trained and medically cleared to work. While serving, they must wear gloves, hairnets, aprons, and examine for open wounds. Serving utensils should be used to ensure accurate portions for everyone. Hot food should be kept in warmers, while cold food should be stored in chillers. Pantries are supposed to be strictly off limits for loitering and must remain free from vermin and trash. BOC monitors have observed limited access to pantries, unequal meal opportunities, and a lack of supervision during feedings at GRVC. We've received several complaints from people in custody at GRVC spanning different housing areas concerning the in-house feedings and the inadequate access to institutional food. Since our May 2024 public meeting, and for several weeks before the May meeting, board staff have been in constant communication with facility leadership regarding these GRVC-specific food pantry issues. BOC staff have been working hand in hand with Assistant Commissioner Court to closely monitor the situation until it is fully resolved. The facility has initiated work in 6 housing areas to identify pantry issues. They've also conducted audits on warmers and chillers to determine operability and necessary repairs or replacement. Sanitization, cleaning, and maintenance initiatives are well underway. And thank you to AC Court and her staff for their work in this area. Following the correction of physical conditions, addressing operational concerns becomes pivotal. This includes ensuring officer supervision during feedings, securing pantry doors when not in use, assigned trained and medically cleared servers, conducting temperature readings upon food arrival, maintaining food pans on warmers and chillers, also known as hot and cold carts, and implementing proper sanitation procedures after each meal. The challenges at GRVC have evolved over time and were expanded by unchecked practices during the pandemic. Continued monitoring by jail leadership and housing area staff is essential to prevent a return to previous conditions. The goal is for everyone who is in custody within the department to feel secure about their next meal without any uncertainty regarding their opportunity to eat. Thank you to Director Melendez for preparing this update and for her leadership on this issue. And thank you to BOC monitoring staff for their extensive work on this issue. We look forward to hearing updates from DOC on the issues later in the meeting. And we also look forward to DOC sharing its update regarding the EMTC recreation yard. And on behalf of staff, BOC staff, I want to thank and commend Assistant Commissioner Harvey and her team and DOC's Facilities Maintenance and Repair Division on their efforts to reopen this area. Next, did any board members have any questions or comments on that? Next, we share our deepest condolences with the families of department staff who have passed since the board's May meeting. The staff who have passed are Officer Robert Boone, retired Officer Harold Cherry, retired Captain Anita Bryant, retired Captain Richard Poplawski, retired Captain Wilfred Carr, retired Assistant Deputy Warden John Milton Levy, retired Officer Gordon Wilkinson, retired Captain Dorothy Alston Habersham. And next, an update on census data. As of June 23rd, 2024, there were approximately 6,454 individuals in department custody. In Bellevue Hospital Prison Ward, 49 people in custody. In Elmhurst Hospital Prison Ward, 6 people in custody. At EMTC, 1,507 people in custody. In GRVC, 967 people in custody. In NIC, 268 people in custody. OBCC, 1,378 people in custody. RESH, 160 people in custody. RMSC, 385 people in custody. RNDC, 1,042 people in custody. And in West Facility, 687 people in custody. And next, I have an update regarding reporting. The board is conducting comprehensive heat monitoring in NYC jails this summer to ensure the safety and well-being of people in custody. Data collection began on May 31st and will continue through August 30th. As part of this effort, we've launched a heat monitoring dashboard that will be updated every Monday. And the dashboard is located on BOC's website under the reports/dashboard page. This near real-time monitoring of daily conditions will allow early identification and resolution of any issues. A final staff report summarizing our findings will be issued in October 2024. And that concludes BOC staff updates.
Thank you, Jasmine. Does any member have any questions for Jasmine on the updates? We now will take time to hear any committee chairs give updates about their committees if they have any. No updates? We will now move to the next agenda item, which is the board vote on final rules implementing the requirements of Local Law 42 for the year 2024. I will turn it over to Jasmine to provide a brief summary of the final rules.
Thank you. Everyone who heard comments in 17. The final rule. I'm sorry, I did not have my microphone on, so I'll start again. I thank the vice chair and thanked everybody who testified and provided written comment at our June 17th hearing last week. The final rules are posted on our website and will be published in the city record. The following is a summary of the substantive changes in the final rules based on public feedback. We added more language directly from the local law related to the 14-hour lockout requirement, the narrow and limited nature of emergency lock-ins, the requirement that programming has to be offered outside of the cells, and the requirement to not place an incarcerated person in restraints unless an individualized determination is made that restraints are necessary to prevent an imminent risk of self-injury or injury to other persons. We removed the contagious disease units from the list of housing units exempted from the involuntary lock-in requirements, since the local law does prohibit lock-in restrictions beyond 14 hours in contagious disease units. For clarity, the local law states that for purposes of contagious disease units, after a referral from healthcare staff, a person may be held in a medical unit overseen by healthcare staff for as limited a time as medically necessary as exclusively determined by healthcare staff in the least restrictive environment that is medically appropriate. We also align the language in section 6-05 subdivision A more closely with that of the local law, in that a person may only be placed in de-escalation because they pose a specific risk of imminent injury to staff, themselves, or other incarcerated persons. We clarified that the 4-hour limit for placement in de-escalation confinement begins immediately following the incident precipitating placement in such confinement. We eliminated, quote, attitude as a factor to be considered when assessing whether a person continues to present an imminent risk while in restrictive housing. We specified that programming in restrictive housing must be led by staff or external providers with expertise in providing programming and therapeutic services. Regarding due process and restrictive housing placement hearings, the following additions were made. The requirement to notify people of their right to a legal representative or advocate and the right to attend their hearing. The requirement to notify the charged person's defense attorney of the infraction and subsequent hearing. The person's right to remain silent. The ability for the legal representative or advocate to appear virtually and privately confer with the charged person. Requiring a non-exhaustive list of evidence the department may have in its possession 48 hours before the hearing. Impose possible sanctions and remedies for DOC's noncompliance with evidentiary requirements or failure to provide an interpreter. Ensured that adjournments sought because DOC failed to timely turn over evidence are not counted against the person charged. We clarified that all persons in restrictive housing must step down to general population or a restorative rehabilitation unit after they have been in restrictive housing for 30 days. We clarified that individuals who volunteer for placement in restorative rehabilitation units must be discharged from said units upon request. We reiterated that individuals in restorative rehabilitation units must be afforded identical services and conditions as individuals housed in general population. We clarified that the department may not place a person in de-escalation confinement for more than 4 hours immediately following the incident precipitating placement in such confinement, more than 4 hours in any 24-hour period, or more than 12 hours in any 7-day period.
Thank you, Jasmine. I will now administer a roll call vote on the final rules, which board members have received.
We have discussion? I'd like to speak in favor.
Okay,
Is that appropriate now?
I want to vote for them and then we can
Yeah.
discuss. All right, board members have received the rules. Will a member move for a vote? Can I get a member to second?
Second.
Now we should have a discussion if any board members have any comments.
I'm going to vote for this, but I just wanted to make some comments. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at today's board meeting in favor of implementation of New York City Law 42 within our board rules. Solitary confinement injures men and women subjected to it. People in custody require daily access to activity and direct face-to-face conversation with other incarcerated persons, not separated by wire netting and metal doors. The department claims that there is no such thing as solitary confinement on Rikers Island and that restrictive housing is not punitive. They misspeak. West Facility is a solitary confinement unit, period, and there's a punitive unit. Several floors of the North Infirmary Command are clearly punitive solitary confinement. Men in these units have almost no programming and often remain in their cells 24 hours a day. The DOC claim that these men have regular access to day rooms in their cell would be laughable if it were not so painful to experience and to observe. There's no evidence that the city jails are safer because of solitary confinement, but they are certainly more dangerous to the people confined in these cells. During a 3-year period in the city's jails from 2010 to 2010 to 2013, 2182 acts of self-harm were committed, 103 were potentially fatal. And although only 7.3% of admissions during this period, including any solitary confinement, 53.3% of acts of self-harm and 45% of acts of potentially fatal self-harm occurred within this group. The board has regularly evaluated deaths in custody. A constant finding has been that DOC staff commonly fail to make their 30-minute required rounds in general population and required 15-minute rounds in MO units. Our reviews also find that correctional staff often fail to accurately report the timing of their rounds. In our review of 2021 deaths in custody, we found, quote, the pervasive issue of insufficient rounding and supervision by correctional staff was present in at least 8 of the 10 deaths reviewed in this investigation. These fatal consequences of lack of supervision occurred in both cell and dormitory housing areas. Compounding these facts with the observation confirmed by Gen and Tech review that falsification or insufficient logbook entries were common in the deaths we reviewed. In our review of 2023 deaths, insufficient touring and falsified entries in the logbooks remain common practice in the deaths in the cases we reviewed. DOC rules are clear. Section 705090, general supervision, directs that correction officers, quote, shall be constantly alert while on duty, observing everything that takes place on post with insider hearing, and shall constantly patrol the post during their tour of duty. I strongly urge the board to pass our solitary confinement rule implementing New York City Law 4D2 for the following reasons. There is no evidence that solitary confinement makes the jail safer. It is a punitive practice. Placement in solitary occurs without providing adequate representation for people in custody to confront their accusers and review and refute the evidence against them. Many people I have spoken to in solitary have no idea why they're there. Solitary confinement units are violent by design. Humans particularly react poorly and often violently to being isolated from other people and locked inside of cells for prolonged periods of time. Movement of persons housed in solitary confinement are cruel. They are repeatedly stripped naked, searched multiple times, locked in handcuffs, belly chains, and leg chains each time they leave their cell. Restraints are sometimes necessary for safe movement within jails, but people in solitary are regularly locked up in chains in order to shower, confer with their lawyers, attend exercise, or receive visits from loved ones behind plastic barriers in the visiting rooms, which are almost impenetrable to light and to sound. Solitary is cruel and for me unusual. It is not necessary, it does not improve behavior, it does not make the jail safer, and reinforces the relationships between people in custody and staff, which are dangerous for all. The Adams and administration and DOC have maintained a reign of imperfectness in the jails. I had another word, but I'm not going to use it. They threatened to deny the public and the board knowledge of deaths in custody by cutting off our access to video, so we couldn't see what was going on. They blocked for 6 months through that our fundamental role of oversight. Board leadership representing the Adams administration did not support our ultimately successful effort to restore access to video in the jails. The board should implement city law as our rule today. Failure to do so will result in more violence, more suffering, and more deaths. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon. I'm going to vote in favor of the local law 42, but I do want it to be on the record that I take exception to a couple of things. The fact that the person in custody can't be held in restrictive housing more than twice in 12 months. I disagree with that. I disagree with during visits, the person in custody can sit on their lap someone 14 years old or under, I think it should be 12 years for security reasons. And depending on the housing area's configuration, the person in custody should not be free to move about in the entire housing unit, but only in congregate areas. To give an example, C-74, it would not be good security practice to allow people in custody free reign of the corridors. But in, let's say, GRVC, it would be okay. So it needs to be more specified. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitts. Any other member have comments?
Good afternoon, everyone. Decades ago, I had the benefit of going to San Francisco and taking a tour of Alcatraz, and I still suffer the vicarious trauma from seeing solitary confinement. So it is my contention that solitary confinement doesn't necessarily lead, as presently constituted, doesn't lead to positive outcomes. So I'm going to vote in favor of the new resolutions.
Thank you, Board Member Torchy. Any other member? With hearing no more comments from member, I will now take a roll call vote on this resolution. Mr. Torchy?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Judge Cozier?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Ms. Skipper?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The rules pass unanimously. Thank you. I want to thank the rulemaking committee, DOC staff, but I also wanted to thank the advocates, DOC and COBRA for their comments, their feedbacks as we went through this process to implement those rules, to make sure that they are published and getting them published before the deadline. We will now, at this time, we don't have any people in custody comments. So now we will move to
Can we check if Councilwoman Sandy Nurse is on remotely? Okay.
I'm sorry, I apologize for that. We will now turn to DOC for updates on the items listed on the agenda. A, DOC's plan for implementing the requirements of Local Law 42, joint update with CHS. Update on food pantry issues at GRVC and any outstanding items status of EMTC rec yard.
Good afternoon, board members. I am Francis Torres, First Deputy Commissioner for the New York City Department of Correction. Before we begin, and on behalf of Commissioner Linnell McGinley-Leedy, we want to thank the board for acknowledging retired members of service whom we have lost since our last meeting. This past week has been especially difficult for the department. In addition to those retired members of service, we also lost Robert Boom last Tuesday. Officer Boom collapsed suddenly while on duty when he was monitoring recreation at OBCC. Despite the immediate care afforded to him by his fellow DOC uniform members, correctional health services staff, people in custody, and FDNY EMS workers, Officer Boom passed away, and his loss is a tragedy to us. Those who work closely with Officer Boom continue to keep his spirit alive throughout the department, and as his colleagues, we will continue to celebrate his life and legacy. Our thoughts remain with Officer Boom's families and loved ones. We now want to take this opportunity to briefly highlight all that has happened since we last met on May 14th. On May 31st, as part of the city's first ever public safety promotion ceremony, Cherie Ann Rembert was appointed to Bureau Chief and Chief of Staff of the department. Charlton Lemon was appointed to Assistant Chief, and Allende Williams was promoted to Associate Commissioner. These individuals have served the New York City or New York and the department with integrity and compassion for many years. And we are proud to have these dedicated leaders in the boldest family. Last week, the department appointed Ned McCormick to Associate Commissioner of Facility Operations to support our efforts to monitor and improve all aspects of jail operations. Congratulations to all of our recent appointees. We are excited to have the wealth of experience they bring to our leadership roles. No less exciting, on June 7th, the department presided over a graduation ceremony for 77 new correction officers and a promotion ceremony for 50 captains. In that ceremony, the department formally swore in and appointed several members of the commissioner's executive leadership team, including the speaker. We also honored Assistant Commissioner Stacy King from the Division of Programs and Community Partnerships for 35 years of exceptional service to the department. Also in the month of June, the department hosted a congregate graduation ceremony in collaboration with our partners from the New York City Department of Education. And alongside family and friends of graduates, we celebrated 35 truly exceptional emerging adults and adults from GRVC, the Rose M. Singer Center, the Robert N. Davern Center, who earned a high school diploma or equivalency in the past academic year. Education is a benefit to our society that can change the trajectory of a person's life. Educational achievement must be celebrated by all. The commissioner and I were honored to witness this important event for these adults and young people, and were moved by the words of hope and pride they shared in their speeches. This was the 19th annual congregate graduation ceremony the department has held, and we look forward to many more. June is Pride Month, so we would be remiss if we didn't take this opportunity to highlight just one of the many events our amazing LGBTQ+ affairs unit has been hosting throughout the month to affirm and celebrate people in our care from the LGBTQ community. Rose M. Singer held a Pride event on June 13th that included a ball co-hosted by the Black Trans Femme Artists Collective, as well as performances by people in custody and opportunities for people to make Pride signs. For the third year in a row, all Pride signs made by people in custody throughout the month will be marched through the New York City Pride Parade by volunteers who help uplift the voices of those in custody beyond the walls of our city's jails. We also want to highlight that we held a ribbon cutting ceremony for a new Children's Museum of Manhattan visit room at GRVC. This space, as well as the space opened in May at Rose M. Singer, was designed in tandem with CMOM and the Robin Hood Foundation to promote imaginative play during children's visits with an incarcerated loved one. It is our goal to add one of these learning hubs to each facility on Rikers Island. I'm almost done. Just last week, on June 18, 2024, we welcome our commissioner's colleague, Commissioner Keith Howard, at our first culmination ceremony of our Fatherhood Initiative pilot program. This promising partnership between our department, the Department of Youth and Community Development, and SCO of Family Services guided 17 emerging adults at RNDC through a 12-week program designed to foster healthy and positive relationships with their children, the co-parents, and community services. Despite our challenges, there is so much good to celebrate in the department. On behalf of Commissioner McGinley Leedy, I would like to thank everyone at the department for their continued dedication to improving our jails and supporting the people in our care. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Our colleagues and I will make ourselves available for questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Nancy Sebasta, and I am the Acting General Counsel for the New York City Department of Correction. Thank you for the opportunity this afternoon to update you on where the department stands with the implementation of Local Law 42. Early this month, the city reached out and spoke with the parties involved in the Nunez litigation and wrote to Judge Swain in the federal court, expressing the city's intent to seek relief from the immediate implementation of Local Law 42, given what appear to be direct conflicts with the orders from Judge Swain's court. In the wake of that letter, we have been engaging in a meet and confer process with the parties within the litigation and have reached out to schedule such meet and confer with the City Council at the direction of the monitor. We continue to meet with the monitor to discuss the requirements of Local Law 42, as well as the operations of the New York City jails, to find ways that we can implement things safely that the monitor will approve. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you. Any members have any questions? Board Member Cohen?
Do you have any idea how long this process will continue?
I'm not certain, but we'll be happy to keep the board abreast as things continue. It's an active process right now.
And could you identify some elements of the proposed rule that you are in agreement with and that you're not in agreement with? What's the basis of the discussions, basically, that are going on?
So the department's concerns with the conflicts and particular elements of Local Law 42 have been made broadly available. I don't have specific items that I can give you, but I'm happy to follow up with the board on all the information that we have shared previously and anything that's developed further going forward.
I mean, following up on Dr. Cohen, but can you give us at least one example of something that the monitor diverts from the law and our rules?
I can refer you to the monitor's expression of concern regarding an absolute limitation on the allowable time for lockdowns. The monitor expressed specific concern for setting an absolute cutoff period, as he expressed that did not afford the department sufficient discretion depending upon the circumstances that were afoot. That's just one that comes to mind.
Any other comments from board members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Tamika White. I am assigned as the Deputy Warden of Administration and Operations at the George R. Bierno Center. Everyone who works at this agency, myself included, is committed to building safer and more humane jails. Ensuring that our people in our custody have care, access to healthy, nutritious food is fundamental to that commitment. Facility leadership has reviewed the board's recent findings related to the food pantries and the services at GRVC. We have also conducted our own thorough review and undertaken remediation efforts where needed. I would like to briefly detail that work. Department policy requires that the pantry areas be regularly cleaned and properly sanitized, and outlines procedures for food storage, delivery, and service to ensure food is safe to consume. Correction officers receive instruction in an extensive range of topics during their recruit training, including food safety, and are also reminded through roll call of food safety procedures. In response to the board's recent findings, housing areas at GRVC were instructed to conduct self-assessment of their pantry, and supervisors conducted tours of the pantry areas throughout the facility. Following these assessments, work was undertaken to abate the identified issues related to sanitation, inoperable or broken equipment, and food service procedures. First, all pantries have been sanitized thoroughly and are in the process of being repainted. Pantries are cleaned and sanitized on a daily basis, but our goal through this process was to deep clean each pantry for a fresh start. Exterminators have been brought in to assess each individual area and perform work as needed. Work orders have been submitted for the inoperable equipment or other areas in need of repair. We expect all outstanding work to be completed by the end of this month. Facility staff are reminded through roll call and supervisory tours to adhere to the food safety procedures and to reinforce adherence to policy. Both facility leadership and the department's Nutritional Services Division, NSD, have also been regularly touring these areas throughout the assessment and abatement process to assess and monitor for progress, and will continue to do so on a regular basis. Second, in addition to bringing food pantry areas up to standard, we are assessing day-to-day food practices to ensure the food is being delivered, stored, and served properly. We continue to maintain a daily feeding and sanitation schedule for each meal. Area supervisors are expected to properly supervise feeding procedures and document food temperature readings. With the help of NSD, GRVC has inventoried all of our serving supplies and has addressed any previous inventory issues so that the food is consistently served with the appropriate utensils, and food handlers are outfitted with the appropriate sanitary equipment. The department utilizes persons in custody work details to assist with the day-to-day food service operations. We are currently evaluating whether the facility needs more individuals in custody trained and assigned to be food handlers to support these operations. Facility leadership has been messaging information about the pantry and food service assessments and related work via the person in custody council meetings to ensure people in custody are aware of the process and can provide feedback if necessary. Last, it's also important to note that because these spaces are used on a daily basis, keeping them cleaned and up to standard is a continuous process. These spaces are and will continue to be evaluated on a regular basis for sanitary and other conditions. There are three types of formal recurring inspections performed at each facility: the Department of Health's monthly inspection, the DOC Sanitarian's monthly inspection, and the Facility Environmental Health Officer's weekly inspection. Food and pantry inspections occur during the monthly sanitation inspection. In line with policy, all food service areas must be inspected during this time. In addition to these formal inspections, NSD staff will also make regular tours of these spaces to continually assess the food service operation island-wide. We recognize that there is still some work to be done, but we believe that things are trending in the right direction. We appreciate the opportunity to share our progress, as well as the board's partnership in these efforts. My colleagues and I are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from any members?
If you could just stay there a second. I actually have a question for the chair. I neglected to raise it earlier. Is there any, I mean, we have rules. The initial rule, the first set of rules had to do with hygiene and food. Do our findings and the responses of the department suggest there needs to be a modification of our rules on food?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Cohen. Yes, our rules, particularly Chapter 1, do need to be updated and refreshed, including food pantry issues. And that is a priority that we're going to focus on for the remainder of the year. I also know that is one of the chair's priorities, to do rulemaking in that area on food issues.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to know, how often is a supervisory or evaluatory tour in food pantries conducted during food service?
So during food service, the supervisors are active in this whole process. They're active when the food is delivered to the housing area. They make rounds of all their areas during the institutional feeding. So it's regular. Once the food arrives, we know that the food service program has commenced, and the supervisors are dispatched to the areas, and they're monitoring their areas during the
So
week.
this would be like daily?
More than daily. I mean, the supervisors are there. There's three institutional feedings throughout the day, so they're there for those.
Mhm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Thank you, board.
Thank you very much.
We'll now turn to CHS for a presentation on their variance request, followed by public comment on this request. Oh, I'm sorry, status of the E. Trying to move, it's hot. It's hot. Hot. Apologies.
No problem. Good afternoon, Board. I am Deputy Commissioner Patrick Ben, Fleet and Facilities Administration. Happy to announce that the EMTC yard, all the construction has been completed. The yard is reopened. This yard was one main yard that was divided into 4 quadrant yards. Each quadrant yard is roughly about 3,500 square feet, which allows us to accommodate 1 housing unit per quad per recreation. And regardless of any physical capacity that is aligned with the fire safety regulations of the department, and will only bring as many individuals to a quad that can be safely commingled for recreation at any given time, taking into account the security considerations and staffing levels. Thank you. We're available for any questions.
Any comments from any board members?
Yes. Last week, I had the benefit of touring the EMTC recreational yard. And what was notable was the enormous gratitude that was expressed by the PICs to the newly acquired yard access. It was hotter than Africa out there, and the yard was actually almost filled to capacity, so that was a good thing to see. So I just want to commend and to acknowledge the efforts made in getting that done.
Yeah, I would just like to thank all the staff involved, members of the department's team, and as well as all the facility leaders itself.
I'd like to again commend DC Ben and Warden Assistant Commissioner Harvey for their exemplary call or answer to the needs of the department.
Thank you.
Excuse me, hold it, before you go.
Almost got me.
I'm very excited. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm very excited to hear that the areas for recreation have been updated and are usable now. But my concern is something that I've always been critical about, and that is what happens once you have the facility and once you have the staff, what takes place in that recreation area. I was very super critical of the Board of Education when I monitored the after-school centers throughout the city of New York. And I go into the facility and I find the teacher sitting in the corner on a chair reading a newspaper and just handing out 3 basketballs so that kids could go over them, and no leadership whatsoever. And I'm concerned that this is going to happen in the Department of Correction as well. And I was wondering that while we have that facility open for our people in custody, are we going to have and make sure that those people that are supervising the recreation area are qualified to be able to instruct, guide, and lead in recreation activities? And I'm not going to be satisfied until I see that. And I'm not ready to commend anybody for anything that's going on as well until I see it. So if I can get some information on that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, question, board member. C. Harvey, take that.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Sonia Harvey, and I'm the Assistant Commissioner of the Eric M. Taylor Center, 1010 Hazen Street, Rikers Island. And I'm very excited today about the opening of the recreation yard. And in response to your question, Mr. Ramos, we have a recreation director that goes into the quads and interacts with the PICs. They play pickleball, soccer, basketball. There's enough room for them to walk around and exercise. And we are developing programs and tournaments for them to take place while they're in the recreation yard. So they're not simply just going out with a basketball and hanging out. We have big plans. In addition to that, we have several small recreation yards within the facility, and we are working on getting those up to par as well. But right now, the quads are working. Every housing area at the Eric M. Taylor Center is receiving recreation at this time. And I have to applaud my team for that. I have to give them a round of applause because we came a long way, and my mission was to open that recreation yard. It was a long, hard fight, but we got there. On June 18th, 2024, the Eric M. Taylor Center has a recreation yard, and the PICs are going out for their 1 hour of recreation.
Well, one of the things that I have to then commend you is the fact that I've always believed that through recreation, physical activity, and the people in custody have a system of letting out a lot of their frustrations. And not only that, but taking it out on other people. But the more tired they go to bed, the least time they have to think about hurting themselves or hurting anybody else. So that's why I asked the question in terms of the 3 balls, and not being able to supply them with some positive recreation activities. And I think it's important for those that are working with the people within recreation that they learn or instruct in high and low organizational skills, because our people in custody, a lot of them are tremendous athletes, but they don't know how to play ball. Okay, so that the fact is that if our people know how to handle the ball, then they should be able to teach them so that they could play properly. But that's why I asked the question.
So, Mr. Ramos, in addition, we do have a team at the Eric M. Taylor Center as well, a basketball team. And the fact that I can move them outside now, it frees up my gymnasium. So I can have tournaments. We have other facilities come over. We've had a high school come over and interact with the PICs. So we've been able to implement more programming for the individuals now that we have the gymnasium free. We have approximately 18 programs that are offered to the PICs at the Eric M. Taylor Center. So this is a big accomplishment for us. The PICs are happy. When I walk in the housing areas, they said, AC Harvey, thank you. You kept your word. And you always do, but you really kept your word with this. When I tell you they're happy, they're very happy. They go out there, when they come in, they're exhausted, just like you said. It's doing away with the idle time, and things are really working, and we're moving in the right direction at the Eric M. Taylor Center.
I think we're talking the same language. And one of the things that I want to share with you is that I'm one of the oldest people in the New York's finest running club. And the fact is that I was running one day, and there was this young man who came to me and says, "You worked in the Department of Correction, did you, sir?" I said, "That's right, I did." He says, "Well, do you know something? when you prepared us for the 5K in Rikers Island. That's when I started running. And I was surprised to see him there at the Finest Running Club. And he, by the way, he won in his actual age category. So he learned he was a PIC, and he was from Rikers Island. And we did have a 5K at Rikers Island. And that was because of the fact is that our staff at Rikers Island, they were able to take time to teach people how to run and also to participate in athletics. That's why I asked the questions.
Understood, sir.
But thank you, and I commend you for the work that you do.
You're very welcome. I enjoy my job 34 years in, and I still got a lot left in me.
Good.
The board members?
This question is for Commissioner Ben. How many other yards we require refurbishing or renovation or repair so that they can be used on Rikers?
So we're currently reviewing all facilities and all yards. We're coming up with a plan to draft basically drawings for every facility and situation. Right now, every yard is in good
It's usable?
workable order.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And lastly, I would be remiss in not mentioning all the hard work of DC Ben and his team, the commissioner, the FDC Torres. It was a joint effort. We're a team and we made it happen. So I have to thank everyone.
Any more questions?
I have
One
a few
moment.
questions. I have a few questions. Again, thank you for your efforts in reopening the yard. Just a question, is the yard ADA accessible, compliant?
The yard is ADA compliant with the gates, the widths, the walkways. Also, the water fountains are at the correct height.
Okay. And then are there plans for the subdivided recreation yards and other facilities across the island?
Like I addressed prior to this, we are currently developing a plan to subdivide other areas, and we're drafting up plans and coordinating with facilities leadership to get buy-ins and approvals.
So there's no indication as to which facility will be next?
Not right now.
Okay. And then last question, is there a schedule for?
Sorry, I hurt myself. Hold on.
Sure.
I don't want to put DC Ben in a spot. However, last week after we handed over, or meaning his team handed over the rec yard at EMTC to Assistant Commissioner Harvey, we had a sidebar with FMRD and I asked for a detailed assessment of all of the yards on Rikers Island that we could consider to maximize by creating quadrants. There is a priority for us, and that happens to be at the Robert N. Davron Center, a yard in or annexed to Building 2, dedicated and assigned to emergent adults. We certainly want to prioritize that one next. I asked the team to actually do the schematics for us. We're waiting for the schematics to be fully drawn and reviewed by our newly assigned acting warden Chester. Once the acting warden has been able to look at the options presented to us, then we'll be able to get all the necessary approvals and put together a timeline. But I will tell you that our next project will be at RNDC, to north and to south, and then we'll go back into EMTC and prioritize for all of the other jails.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
First Deputy, now that we have you, thinking about the summer and the heat, is that taken into consideration in the new designs of the courtyards?
Are you talking about sprinklers?
You know
Pools.
you know me from before, so.
I don't want to discuss any further, only because we are in conversations internally on what the cost will look like. We know too well, and that is an idea that we've been looking forward every single summer. Just yesterday, Assistant Chief Lemon and I were trying to figure out how to best do it. not just for the emergent adults at RMDC, but also Rosie's and some of the adults. The adults react differently, so we're trying to determine what's next.
I just wanted to follow up and ask that the board be able to receive those plans once they're finalized.
Not a problem, thank
Okay.
you.
For me, I'm sorry. Oh. So we still provide programs in the, in the gymnasium. So if they opt not to go outside, there are programming and opportunities to go to the inside gymnasium.
Any other comments? Thank you. We'll now move to CHS for a presentation on a variance request, followed by public comment on a request and a board vote.
Hi, good afternoon. Deepan Subedi, the Chief Medical Officer for CHS. So should I start off with the medication variance first? Sure. So the medication variance regarding psychotropics, the current Board of Corrections standards require that everyone on psychiatric medication, regardless of housing area or diagnosis or the type of medication, be seen every 2 weeks. And we're asking to renew a long-standing variance that's been in place for, I think, over almost 19 years now, allowing CHS to see stable patients in general population on psychotropic medications up to 28 days out, rather than 14 days. This practice, or the requirement to see individuals every 2 weeks, is inconsistent with community practice and standards, and in jail settings where individuals are scheduled according to their need and risk, and that can range from weeks to months out. In addition, having this variance allows us to make efficient use of our staffing by ensuring that we're seeing individuals who may have, subacute or acute medication-based needs. So I believe the board has generally agreed on the points before and maybe for other reasons and has extended the variance, and so we're asking for another 6-month extension today.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I voted for this. I cannot remember when I was voting for this variance, and I have no reason to think that it is not working. But I do think it would be appropriate for the board to review the underlying basis for the claims. And I think arguments for community practice, I use them, you use them, but they're not. It's a little different in jail. You don't necessarily know some of the patients who are coming back in. You don't know all of them, and it would not be unreasonable to start someone on a psychotropic medication with a 2-week, depending upon who they were and how they. And so, would it be reasonable, do you think, for new patients coming in to begin them on 2 weeks, and then to reevaluate them on 2 weeks, and then to extend it to 30 days, if that's okay? And could you also comment both on the reasonableness or the clinical appropriateness of that and the staffing implications?
Sure. So we actually already do that. So individuals newly start on medications are seen either a week to 2 weeks out, and then once stable, if there's no additional medication changes, then they're seen up to 28 days out. So that's already in practice.
Okay. And that's the policy that you teach?
Correct. It's part of our policy.
Okay. Well, look, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Another question. Doctor, I think we have talked about this before. When we think about the diagnosis, medication, psychiatry of young adults, how you feel about your competency and staffing? Do you have the right psychiatrists with the right expertise to support young adults 18 to 25?
Yeah, so we have child adolescent psychiatrists working in RNDC. We generally try to recruit for those with that specialty in that setting. And we do have guidelines on recognizing, trauma spectrum disorders, first break, diagnoses, as well as ADHD in that population, and we continue to enforce that. Sure.
Great.
Any other comments? We will now move to public comment on the variance. Do we have any public comment? None at this time. We will now turn to a vote on the psychotropic medication variance. I will ask the member to make a motion to move.
So move.
Why don't
Second.
we work the rules?
Second.
So that comes up.
Any debates or conditions from any board members?
Let's do it. Let's go.
By roll call vote for each member. Skipper,
Excuse me?
roll call vote on the variance.
So I am the new kid on the block, and I won't say I'm not. I'm just concerned that this variance has been in place since 2005. I'm trying to figure out why we are still giving a variance that started in 2005. I mean, if there is something amiss with the rules that we have situated, then we just need to do a rulemaking session instead of keep granting a 6 month variance since 2005. This seems to be a waste of time. I'm sorry. And I'm nothing against your medical knowledge or anything like that. But this just seems to be a waste of the board's time that we do this every 6 months since 2005.
I ditto, and the same thing with the tuberculosis situation, variance. I think that if bringing it up to us every 6 months, it's a waste of time. I think that we should, reconfigure the rules, whatever it is, and extend it to make it a year at least, or make it longer if need be.
Thank you, Skipper and Ramos. And it was actually what I was going to recommend. I just asked Jasmine, why are we keep continuing to do a variance? We need to change our rules that accommodate best practices of what's in the field so that we don't have to do the variances, and those people who are stable will get visited 28 days and those more at risk will be seen earlier and soon. But that's through a rulemaking. So I think we as a board have to make a decision of adjusting the rules that are actually accessible and accountable to how today functions. But I still got to make a vote on this variance. So Skipper,
Just because of the concerns I raised, I am going to say no.
okay. Ramos,
Likewise.
likewise what? No, yes, for the record.
No.
Pitts,
No.
Franco,
Yes.
Cohen,
And just as a comment, these mental health standards were developed collectively with CHS, with many other experts. It was a complex, long process, and I don't think we should take this out of context. If we want to initiate a review of the mental health standards, we should consider that and have some discussion about that. Not today, but I don't think these rules should be changed individually. And even if they had to be, they'd have to be hearings on it. The board can't change the rule by a vote. It has to go through a cabinet process.
Judge,
Yes.
Jude,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It passes with 5 yeses, 3 nos. We're in favor of the variance.
Thank you.
Now we have another variance we need to ask for.
Yes, this is another long-standing variance involving TB testing. So the board standards indicate that we should use skin testing for TB, and since that time, there's a blood test for TB that is more efficient, obviates the needs for an individual to come back to the clinic just to get a reading. And this method of TB screening is actually supported by national professional groups as well as the CDC. So we're asking for another 6-month extension to 6-month variance.
Thank you. Any board members have any comments? I'll take a roll call vote. Skipper?
I am going to say yes, because as the one person sitting on this board that has been on Rikers Island numerous times and knows the hassle of taking a TB test and then having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and going back to the clinic to sit for 5 hours before I can get it read again, I understand. But I
Ramos?
just want to say this, and I am the new kid on the block, and I'm going to be outspoken. There are some things that we need to change. There are some policies and practices that we need to really take a look at. these rules that we make should be fluid and should conform to best practices. And if this is a best practice and if it's evidence by empirical evidence, we should not be asking for variances. This should be a rule. It should.
Thank you. Ramos?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
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 Judge? Jude?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Right. We will now turn to Cobra to share staff concerns, comments regarding implementation of local law 42. I get it.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Antoinette Anderson. I am the Correspondent Secretary of the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association. Since the ban of punitive segregation was passed last December, violent offenders, who comprise of approximately 70% of our inmate population, our PRC population, have already been emboldened to attack our members. For example, there have been approximately 260 assaults on staff, 61 spitting incidents, 170 splashing incidents, non-sexual assaults against correction officers, 92 slashings against other PRCs, 60 stabbing incidents since that legislation passed. Those statistics clearly show that banning punitive segregation only jeopardizes our lives instead of protecting our lives and the lives of those in our custody. Furthermore, if violent offenders are able to ride our DOC buses without having their hands and feet restrained as part of local law 42, those PRCs can instantaneously assault or even kill our officers that are transporting them, and then escape into any community in our city, threatening the lives of every New Yorker. This board will be complicit with every single act of violence committed by assaultive PRCs against us or other inmates, other PRCs, if you vote to prohibit, which you already have, us from separating violent offenders from the general population. There is a good reason why no other municipality in the country has adopted this reckless policy. And that is because banning punitive segregation is a direct threat in safety to correctional facilities. It is immoral for you to support such a life-threatening proposal while simultaneously pretending you care about the safety of everyone in our jails. COBA will hold each of you accountable for your vote today, and we will ensure that the public is aware of your role in compromising our safety in our jails. Now, an incident happened last week. I'm waiting for them to show the pictures. I want everybody to turn around and please look at these pictures. You can see it? Okay, I want everybody to look at these pictures. You can't tell if this was a PRC or a staff member. But I'm going to tell you it was a staff member doing his job, affording a PRC hot water. And that PRC turned around and threw that water on the officer. Now, what are we supposed to do with them? We're not supposed to separate them? Now, they could do that to an officer. They can easily do it to another PRC. Separating them for 4 hours is not enough. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be caged in a cell. What I am saying is that this type of individual is an issue for everybody and not just the staff. Could you imagine going home looking like that to your family and having to look in the mirror, and every time you look in that mirror, you see these scars? Could you imagine that? But it is so easy for people to make these rules that we have to follow.
You guys are there to help the PRCs as well as the staff. That could have been a nurse, that could have been a doctor, that could have been one of the CHS workers, that could have been the warden, that could have been a DEP, that could have been a captain, that could have been any person, even you guys that go and visit in these facilities. That could have been any one of us, even an inmate advocacy. How is that okay? So now I ask again, what are we supposed to do with them? How am I supposed to tell my member how to feel? And how to feel safe in going back and doing their job as a New York City correction officer? But yet, when we stay out because of injuries like this, it's an issue. Now, if I return back to work and I'm mentally scarred with this situation, then what? What if I react in a way that you don't feel is appropriate? We have to help everybody. COBRA is not here to fight with you every meeting. We're not only here to fight with DOC. We're here to protect our members as well as the PRCs, because at the end of the day, our job is care, custody, and control. Now, let me ask you a question. If you was in that situation, how would you react? I need everybody to be very mindful of the rulings that they make, because you are not the ones working in these environments. Not only that, could you imagine working 16 hours and in the midst of your second tour, this happens? Please be very mindful, because we are aware that the PRCs are going to go back into the community. And we want them in the community. We don't want everybody locked up away. Those are our sisters, our brothers, our uncles, our fathers, our mates that's in this jail system. So please, we need you to do your job in keeping them safe as well as keeping us safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have some questions for clarification. When you first began, you stated that when the law went into effect, the violence increased. What law are you referring to?
Well, look, when they introduced Local Law 42 in December.
Right, but no changes have been made, so it was not a
Nothing.
direct result to the violence. So I guess that's what I'm trying to
But
understand.
when they implemented it, this is what happened. So let me explain to you what happens. When the PRC know there's no repercussion to their actions, it just get worse.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. When they took away the $25 penalty for the infractions that we would write them up when they misbehave or they curse us out or they invite us to their body parts, guess what? It became a free-for-all. That was the everyday language, because nothing's gonna happen.
Okay. But I want clarity. You said local law 42.
When they introduced it.
All right.
Not when it was passed, sorry.
Right, so it couldn't have been in practice to be a result of the driving of
It
violence.
wasn't in practice, but they knew
Can I
that was
finish?
coming.
Can I
Sorry.
finish?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because we wrote it today for the rules that take effect 7/28. So then that, I can see if it's in effect and is being implemented, but DOC even stated that the monitoring them are asking for a halt. I guess that's what I'm struggling. In your testimony, you stated when the law was introduced, violence ran up.
Right. But not introduced by POC. We know it was introduced by Jamani Williams.
Right, but
Once
I'm
again,
saying,
somebody else that comes down here and testifies and has no clue of what really goes on.
I get my question. In your testimony, you stated as if the law had affected or impacted those in custody, which is why violence drove. That's all I'm trying to get is clarity.
Let me help you.
Okay.
And the fact that they knew that this was coming is one of the reasons why violence went up.
Okay. That's what you were saying.
Yes,
Clear.
ma'am.
Okay. Which we don't know is coming. We just had to pass a rule. But I want to go back to that as well. When you're asking this board to be mindful of the rules that we rule on, it's law. We didn't have a choice but to vote on law that city council. So that advocacy should have happened in city hall.
Well,
Because once they passed it, we have no choice but to amend the minimum standards to be aligned with, according to the law. But I would also say this, taking for granted that we have not experienced that as a PIC, as a person who's worked in custody, yes, we have. Our role of what we're saying today is if you read the rules, there are alternatives. We can't pull out bullet points that we want to acknowledge and highlight that there are de-escalation opportunities. There are other opportunities within the law that gives COBRA actual processes and to hold people accountable. So I would love to sit over and maybe there's a misinterpretation of how that's implemented within the Department of Corrections, but there are alternatives for those individuals that need more than 4 hours to be de-escalated in their behavior. There's a clause in there that talks about that's where the mental health and your health care needs to come in. So you have to read the rules in total to have a discussion and not bullet point to say we only got 4 hours. That's not true.
So it's a few things that I mentioned, right? And I have read it. And a lot of I'm gonna be very honest with you. A lot of the things I don't agree with because I work in that environment. And you're right. It should have been something that City Hall included us on, and they did not. So our avenue now is when we come here and speak, we have the floor. Yes, we're going to express how we feel because not everybody feels that we should have a say in that fight, and we should because it affects us.
Totally appreciate that. And we did have a comment period for Cobra. I wish you would have been on that call. No, we had a public comment where advocates were on a call, DOC had a call, and Cobra had a call. Nothing what you saying came up from Cobra. I wish it would have.
Well, I'm sure I was probably dealing with something because I had a death in the family. So I'm sorry I wasn't available for that call, but I was here last week and I'm here now.
Anybody else?
I just would like to know, other than you're saying that the awareness of people that there's going to be a change in the rule resulted in these burns, do you have any other?
So this incident just happened during the week. Go ahead. This incident just happened. What's today? Last week.
I understand this temporarily with what you said. Do you have any evidence that limitations on restrictive housing make the jails safer?
What I do have is the fact that the PICs know there's no repercussion for their actions and the spike of assault on staff as well as other PICs.
There's no action in response to assault on staff because of our rule, because of the city's rules?
What happens is it goes up because what's going to happen? So let me give you an example. That incident right there, the PIC will be rearrested. And what happens is he gets whatever sentence and is ran concurrent with what he already has. So it's like nothing is really happening. What's going to stop them from burning us, assaulting us, is really no repercussion. So now if this incident happened to another PIC and we separate them for your 4 hours, and now we move them, like I said last week, to another housing area, we can't stop them from doing that to somebody else.
For serious assaults, that only restricts people for 4 hours.
Now, you also said about them only being able, what you didn't say. You think 4 hours is enough when you're the victim in that situation?
I don't think that's what our rule says or what the Rule 42.
You're saying that they can only be restricted up to 4 hours, yes? I'm asking, because you asking me, so now I'm having a conversation with you. Your ruling is saying that they can only be restricted up to a total of 4 hours, yes?
For the initial de-escalation period, if the person still poses a threat to themselves or others, there are other alternatives within the control of the department to take action.
So my question is now, you now have medical involved, and medical says it's not healthy for them to be in there past the 4 hours. So we are to put them in another housing area where they are free to roam to do the same thing to somebody else.
So medical will make the clearance of that person. Again, so I just want to say we could sit down and discuss it where it is. I wish your voice would have been included when we made the invitation so we could have had a deep dive conversation. I get that.
Okay.
But I'm going to move to Skipper, who has a comment before.
Yeah, I just want to look at this from a different lens, if I might, and I want to look at it academically. You have an officer who, by his own volition, is part of the boldest, who should be rigorously trained in de-escalation techniques. We have a PIC who is experiencing a loss of agency. These people can no longer direct their own actions. There are de-escalation techniques, there are trainings. While this incident is unfortunate, And I offer my condolences. It is. It's very unfortunate. What we don't know is what happened before. Was there any interaction? Was there some type of history? We don't know none of that. We just know that this officer was given a PIC hot water and the hot water got thrown on him. And I get that. That's wrong. I get that. But we don't know the whole story. But what I do know is that a lot of times it's a question of training, of appropriate training, of maybe looking at how we train officers to de-escalate, to minimize. Sometimes it could be that. Is this because of these rules? It has been academically and empirically researched that solitary confinement creates psychological issues. So once again, we're up against a roadblock, which is the safety of the officer versus the safety of the PIC. And there's no way that we can gauge which life has more value. We can't. So we need to come to a happy medium. Like I said, bringing this, which was shocking, again, very unfortunate, it's still not giving a whole picture. It's still not giving a whole picture because you have officers who are human who come in dragging whatever happened to them outside and may come out wrong. And I'm not saying this happened. I'm not saying this happened, but it has happened. We need a better picture, And I think it's unfair that we just voted on something and you want to come in and say that this is the cause of XYZ.
So, Ms. Skipper,
Yes.
I'm gonna say this, when you was introduced, the chair
Mhm.
had mentioned all the degrees that you have, right? So
Mhm.
I'm gonna say this, I'm also a scholar and I'm working on my master's,
Mhm.
I achieved my master's. I achieved 2 bachelor's degrees in John Jay, and I also received my master's. I'm now working on my PhD, all in criminal justice. So I understand what research says, right? Because I am conducting research. I am well aware. My issue is that we all know
Mhm.
research, no research. If there's no repercussion for certain actions, people are gonna run amok. Now, what I'm not gonna say is that incident is a direct action of the rule that y'all passed today. What I will say is that violence on Rikers Island has been going up and the assaults on staff has been rising because there is no repercussion behind the things that they do. So for instance, certain things, that should be a felony. I'm sure they make a deal and drop it down to a misdemeanor because that's what they do. So the failure is not just in the BOC, the failure is not just in DOC, the failure is across the board. With the judges, with the courts, it's a failure across the board. We have, once again, the majority of the PRCs have mental illnesses, and I get that. I have people with mental illnesses in my family. So I am not the average correction officer that doesn't understand each aspect of what these PRCs undergo. I understand more than you think. But I will say this, it has to be a middle ground. And I agree with you, Chair. We do need to have a conversation where we can come to a happy medium because we all, once again, the advocates, DOC, BOC, we need each other to make something where it's workable for everybody.
I appreciate that. I just want to close with, and I want to move to public comments, but I just really want to close with, when we talk about research and data, we also know that consequences has never deviated. That's why individuals are on Rikers, because they know they're going to be arrested. So we can't say that not having consequences or having consequences will deviate the behavior, because we know that's how we even got here around crime, committing crime. It's not till individuals understand. But so we know that research has been the longest over the last 25 years that I've been doing that. Consequences have never deviated a person from acting out, which is why they're actually sitting in jail now, because the thought of getting arrested did not outweigh the instant behavior that they wanted to do. But I want us to move on, but I do think this is open for a conversation of different things and actually ensuring that COBRA's voice is included when invited, because we literally invited Cobra to have an out, and some members did show up, but none of the concerns you talked about were expressed off of this law.
Okay.
Any other board member have comments?
I just want to thank everybody for participating in this conversation. It's very unusual that we have a serious conversation about this most serious of problems, and appreciate
Yes.
your participating with us.
And I appreciate your consistency of showing up to
Thank
represent
you.
your officers. I want us to move to public comments.
The first person on the list is Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips.
Peace and blessings, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips, and welcome, board member. I always welcome all the new board members. First, let me just say thank you. The bill isn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but it's what we needed at this time, and I want to thank each and every one of you for hearing the needs of the detainees, most importantly, and also officers, but we'll work on having them understand how to implement it. Then let me address the season and need for basic care like access to clean, drinkable water, something most of us in this very room and society often take for granted. In addition, I also must raise concerns regarding the heat and working fans. I can recall being in units with the sweat running down my legs as if I had just got out of a pool, and constant access to medical staff, CHS, must be 24/7. And also, RNDC yard is really in need of repair, and it should have already been done. I actually had surgery on my right toe because of the barbed wire that went through my shoe over a decade ago, because of the lack of upkeep in the yard. I didn't sue the city because my access probably would have been banned by the city or a commissioner. Instead, I was one of the ones who fought for the now over 14,000 cameras throughout the island. As sure as this nation now celebrates Juneteenth this month, is as sure as this nation should come to learn that solitary by any name is an abomination. I stand before you today to thank you and say now is the time for accountability and true transparency. Actually, captains of safety always have stressed the importance of programming and mentorship for uniformed officers around de-escalation issues. Officers were found to actually have laughed at Layleen. So when we speak of accountability, where's the DOC accountability? In BOC reports in the past, you've actually found discrepancies even in their reporting. I also want to say that working over 2 decades with the same population that cycles throughout DOC, I have actually been held hostage for over 2 hours in a mica shelter, something I've said before on the record, in the community, where security was short-staffed themselves, and instead of making 15-minute rounds, it took 2.5 hours for security to come to me. And in that time, it was my de-escalation tools without a weapon that truly saved my life. Lastly, I will say we still need PREA reports because detainees are still being assaulted, just as uniformed staff is assaulting other uniformed staff. And the numbers are rising. And those are further conversations that need to be had, and I am one who is willing to facilitate them. Peace and bless.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Natalie Fiorenzo.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Fiorenzo. I'm a corrections specialist at New York County Defender Services, where I work regularly with our incarcerated clients to advocate for their rights while they're detained in DOC custody. Today, I'd like to bring an issue to your attention in hopes that we can rely on your partnership to help remedy this situation. As we all know, when VCBC closed in October, West Facility opened new units and housed the brunt of those detainees who were transferred off of the boat. Since these units have opened, our office has had multiple attorneys, social workers, and advocates go to West Facility for counsel visits. We're now 8 months into this transition, and West Facility still does not have even a shred of a procedure for counsel visits. I'd like to walk you through the recent experiences of 2 of the attorneys at our office.
This is an account of a visit in early May of this year. I visited my client at West Facility yesterday. It seems to still be very disorganized. When I was done with the visit, they wouldn't open the door to let me out of the wing with the interview booths because I didn't have a CO with me to escort me. The CO behind the glass told me to find a CO to escort me, which involved me wandering the entire empty wing without success. When I tried to tell the CO behind the glass that I couldn't find a corrections officer, he just said, "Sorry, you'll have to wait." Luckily, not too long after that, the CO who had escorted my client to the visit booth appeared, but when I asked them to escort me back to the front, they just said, "Go by yourself." They did not escort me. It was pretty confusing remembering how to find my way back to the complex from which I came, but fortunately, I figured it out. And this is an account of a visit just a couple weeks ago, earlier this month. I went to visit my client yesterday at West Facility along with my co-counsel on the case. When we got there, the officer at the front gate did not understand why we were there. They had no concept of what to do to conduct a counsel visit. Eventually, they made some calls, and after waiting for over an hour, we were escorted to a counsel visit booth. Unlike at other facilities, we were put in a booth with a telephone. This wasn't very productive since there were two of us, both trying to share the one phone. We ended up just having to scream through the thick glass at each other for the duration of our counsel visit. After about an hour, we were cut off abruptly. A corrections officer banged on the door on the client's side of the booth, trying to signal to him, then opened it and pulled him out. We asked what was going on, and he just said he has to go. As we continued to ask, he continued to repeat the same thing. He has to go, time's up. There were no other attorneys waiting for a meeting. This was his first meeting with the co-counsel, and we had a lot to discuss that we weren't able to. Our ask here is pretty straightforward. Investigate the counsel visit procedure at West Facility. If trainings need to happen, make them happen. If the booths need to be altered to get rid of the phones, alter them. Please put this item on the agenda and ask the department point blank, what is the counsel visit procedure at West Facility? What advocates have had to navigate to speak with their clients has severely impeded their ability to defend them. The complete lack of a procedure is disrupting our clients' constitutional right to counsel and contributing to longer incarceration periods on Rikers Island. This needs to be looked into urgently. One more thing. We also urge you to add another topic to your agenda in an upcoming meeting, the universal recording of phone calls by DOC and Securus Technologies. There has been a lot of recent attention given to DOC's mass surveillance of those in its custody and their communities back home at the hands of Securus Technologies. From the lawsuit filed in April to the City Council bill introduced just last week, DOC's unlawful surveillance practices are coming to light, and we urge the board to add this to their agenda. Ask DOC what percentage of these recorded calls are actually uncovering a security threat. Ask them about their decision to continue renewing the Securus contract without any input from the public, even after these serious breaches came to light. The ability to require the department to testify in the eyes of the public is one of the most powerful assets the board has to keep our clients safe. So please use it. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person to speak in person is Rachel Schneiderman.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Schneiderman, and I'm a correction specialist at New York County Defender Services. I'm going to keep my remarks brief, but I just wanted to share my gratitude to the board and the rulemaking committee for taking into consideration our suggestions related to legal representation and disciplinary hearings in the rulemaking process. We believe that these updated rules will help ensure that our clients actually reap the benefits of the rights gained by the passage of Local Law 42. We hope that the board's faith in our proposed rules is indicative of a continued partnership as we determine how this process will work in real time. We also hope that as defenders and advocates, we can continue to rely on the board to ensure that these rules are adhered to during the disciplinary process going forward. Thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from people who are in the room?
I would just like to say, I was looking at the violence statistics, and over the past, from December to May, there's been a substantial decrease in the number of violent incidents. So just to put the reality as part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cohen.
And so now we're going to move to our remote commenters.
I'm gonna take care of that one. Hello, how you doing? Kelly Price, can you please unmute yourself? Kelly Price, can you please unmute yourself?
Just a moment while we check who is still on remote.
Jay Edith, can you please unmute yourself?
So we have Jay Adidin.
Yes. Hello?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you. My name is Jay Edidin. I'm here as the Director of Advocacy at the Women's Community Justice Association, which advocates with and on behalf of women and gender expansive people impacted by mass incarceration, and as a member of the Beyond Rosie's campaign. While WCJA emphatically applauds the board's implementation of Local Law 42, we are concerned about the lack of explicit safeguards against disproportionate use of solitary confinement against vulnerable populations. In particular, we urge the board to address the well-documented punitive use of solitary against women for minor infractions and the nominally protective but no less traumatic extended isolation of trans and queer people in custody. On one hand, we recognize that these issues largely fall under the umbrella of the rules as written. On the other hand, we also know from experience and data that broad rules and implicit inclusion are not adequate to counteract systemic and individual bias, nor to protect vulnerable and marginalized people. As such, we urge the board to amend the rule to include explicit protections for the groups most commonly victimized by the practice of solitary confinement. I was going to end there, but in light of the COBO representative's comments, I kind of want to add, I find it really odd that COBO recognizes no avenues to accountability other than solitary confinement. Removing punitive segregation, which I want to remind you that the UN classifies as a form of torture, as an option, by no means ties correctional officers' hands, nor is anyone arguing that it should. If we're to be expected to trust the basic competence and benevolence of COs, I think we should likewise trust that most of them, with proper training and support, will be able to find options between torture at will and total anarchy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kayla Simpson.
Kayla Simpson, can you please unmute yourself? Kayla, can you please unmute yourself?
There we go. Wasn't giving me the option.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Your mic is not on yet. There we go. Can you please say something?
Hello?
I don't really hear you. Hold on.
Hello?
Yeah, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Can you please talk back just to make sure?
Yes. Hello? Hello? Testing? 1, 2, 3.
Can't hear you.
Hello?
Kayla, you can start.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can't hear you.
Kayla, you good? I'm gonna try it again. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hello?
Can you speak so we can see?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, your mic keeps going out. I can see you, but I
Hmm.
can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Hello, testing? Testing, testing.
Yeah, not getting any audio.
Hello, hello.
Okay.
Testing.
We're gonna go to the next person.
Caleb, we're gonna move to the next person and then we'll try you again at the end, okay? So the next person is Lauren Stevens Davidowitz.
Lauren Stephen Davidowitz, if you are online, can you please unmute yourself? Nope. It's not coming out.
Can you hear me?
Danielle Gerard, if you're online, can you please unmute yourself? Mm-hmm. Danielle Gerard, are you online? If you are, can you please unmute yourself?
So we're gonna move, Lauren Stevens Davidowitz is not present remotely, it seems. So we're gonna move to Danielle Gerard.
Danielle Gerard, can you please unmute yourself? And Danielle, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, this is Danielle Gerard. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yes, but can you hear me? Can you hear me? I think the problem is on your end. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Unmute. No, that's.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, Danielle.
It's on your end because we can hear, but we can't speak. It says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, I think, I just want to say before I begin my testimony, that I think the problem is on your all's end. I couldn't unmute the whole time you were asking me to do so, and then all of a sudden I was able to. And I could hear Kayla even though you all couldn't. So I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but there's no way to contact you to let you know. In any event, should I begin my testimony now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Board Chair and members. My name is Danielle Gerard. I'm a senior staff attorney at Children's Rights. We are a national organization that advocates on behalf of youth and state systems in the city on behalf of young adults on Rikers. Thank you so much for incorporating much of the actual language of Local Law 42 in the rules, for implementing the law, and for passing the rules unanimously. Given the administration's slow walking the steps to close Rikers and the prevalence of executive orders instead of compliance with the minimum standards, we urge the board to ensure that Local Law 42 be followed to the letter and to prevent the mayor from doing an end run around the law. Any such end run would be particularly harmful to youth on Rikers up to 25 years old. We hope you've read our June 12th public comment. In our limited time, we'd like to highlight 2 points. First, regular, consistent access to quality programming, educational opportunities, mental health services, and recreation would go a long way toward reducing violence on Rikers and reducing the need for youth to be placed in restrictive housing in the first place. This should address the COBA testimony you heard today. Unfortunately, the city's recent budget cuts, COBA's unwillingness to do its job, and other administration policies make these services all but unavailable for months on end. A recent filing in the Hanbury case underscores in particular the ongoing lack of access to education on the island. Second, data show that 55% of the department's jail population has been diagnosed with mental health conditions, and over 1,000 detainees have been diagnosed with serious mental illness. The criminalization of mental health is a shameful response and a direct result of the lack of investment in accessible community mental health services. Young people with unmet mental health needs are more likely to become trapped in systems that are simultaneously causing harm, incapable of providing adequate mental health care, and in some cases, unwilling to support youth's return to the community due to ongoing unmet mental health needs. In this way, the city's jails reinforce the criminalization of mental health and create a negative feedback loop where people who are experiencing a crisis are responded to with isolation and violence. We urge the board to exercise its oversight to exclude young adults up to age 25 with mental health conditions from any isolated placements. Thank you again for your work, and thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to try Kayla again. Kayla Simpson.
Kelly, you can unmute yourself. Let's try it again.
Is the third time the charm?
Yes.
Yes, victory. What can't we do? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for helping through those technical difficulties. I'm Kayla Simpson. I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project and counsel to the plaintiff class in Nunez. And sincere welcome to the new board members. We are truly glad to have you. I want to quickly acknowledge the department's comments today on their intention to seek suspension of the requirements of Local Law 42 in the Nunez process. And this is an active litigation process, but I just want to say we also think it's a limited one. And one thing is evident. The people of the city of New York have made clear that the status quo where the department defaults to locking people in cells and ignoring them cannot continue. And I think it bears repeating that this discussion about restrictive housing and responses to acts of violence should have 2 North Stars. What is humane and what works to create safety. And Ms. Antoine, the COBA representative, emphasized safety too, and that's right. But when we talk about safety, we have to be clear-eyed about past approaches and what they produced. Punitive segregation, not humane, did not create safety. NYC second and third floors, not humane. They don't make people safe. ESH and now RESH are inhumane, dysfunctional, and are in fact multipliers of violence. And DOC's pattern of reflexively reaching for isolation and then pairing it with deeply deficient supervision and inability to afford programming, medical care, basic human necessities has a predictable result: suffering, self-harm, and violence. Uses of force, human deterioration. And this outcome is not limited to punitive segregation, but to ESH, to RESH, and literally any model in DOC. It could happen even with the guardrails that Local Law 42 seeks to put in place. And I say all of this for 2 reasons. First, that the board's vigilant oversight and presence within the jails is more critical now than ever. People in custody and the public, they need your eyes, they need your ears, and your voice through your reporting about what's happening there in restrictive housing units and beyond. And then second, that we all must push as hard as we can, not just for these guardrails to ensure DOC does not abuse discretion that the law affords it, but also for actual sustainable investment about what happens between those guardrails. And by that, I mean programming, family involvement, mental health interventions, adequate staffing ratios, the robust presence of community providers within the facilities rather than the limited scope that exists now. This calls for a reimagining of how we address the public health issue of violence and the operational competence that is necessary to get there, as Ms. Hoskins and Ms. Skipper began to outline today. And that is the work the city must do, whether that's within the structure of Local Law 42 or beyond. And we must all hold them accountable to it. And I think we will in future meetings, in future reports from the board, and in any discussion where these stakeholders are present. And one last word on rulemaking. I just wanted to extend a thanks to the board for considering our comments, for implementing some of our recommendations, and honestly for your willingness to engage with some of what are the most difficult and complex problems in the jails. And we look forward to your oversight and to continue to work together on these human rights issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to just check one more time to see if any remaining people are still on remotely. Okay, so we're finished with remote comments.
Thank you. I want to read a section. As vice chair, according to the bylaws, the vice chair's position is from July 1 to June 30th of the following year. And the bylaws state that the vice chair shall be elected by majority vote of the board each year at the regular meeting of the board held in the month of June, or as soon thereafter as possible. The vice chair shall serve a term of 1 year, commencing the first day of July and terminating on the 30th day of June, subsequent to the election of a successor. With that being said, my term as vice chair will be up June 30th. Keeping with the prospect of keeping lived experience in leadership, I would like to make a motion to this board for Helen Skipper to be vice chair starting July 1, and I will ask a member to make a motion.
Motion accepted.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote. Skipper?
Yes.
Ramos? Ms.
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Ranko?
Yes.
Cohen? Judge?
Yes.
You? And myself, yes. Unanimously, Helen Skipper, effective July 1st, will be vice chair of the Board of Corrections. All right, thank you to everyone who attended and participated in today's meeting. The board's July meeting is scheduled to take place on Tuesday, July 16th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So,
Meeting is adjourned. That's a lot.
updates on this program that I where. Thank you. Thank you. We're